Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and I was always told I had a voice for radio, so today I'm going to be showing you what is, quite frankly, a pretty gosh darned good Gardevoir list. Or I suppose I should say Mega Gardevoir list. Now, I've said this on a couple of recent videos, I'm making an effort recently to show you guys good lists. I have no interest in showing you, fun little lists which are actually rubbish and you couldn't take into a tournament. Maybe a few ones here and there in the future, but for right now, we are showing you good lists. Now, this is the list that Scott Simmons used in a recent game from this channel. Again, I'll pop that link in the description so you can go and see that if you wish. Today, we are just talking about the list. And if you look at the list, the very first thing you're going to notice, maybe the fact that everything's shiny, lay off, he is a lovely, lovely man. And secondly, just 4-offs all across the board. If you look at the right-hand side, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 3, 2. It is consistency. Now, the key to this deck is your Mega Gardevoir EX, and that attack Despair Ray. 2 energy, 110 damage, you can discard as many bench Pokemon as you like, and you get to do an extra 10 damage for every bench Pokemon you discard. Now, in an earlier video, we saw a Mega Gardevoir list, and it played all sorts. You can play Hawlucha, so that it forces your opponent to switch their active, and you can play Absol, allowing you to move 3 damage counters from one of your opponent's Pokemon to another one of your opponent's Pokemon. Here, that is not what Seb is doing. Seb is going ahead here and very, very clearly just going consistency and setting up. Seb is laying out his cards, pun intended, right at the beginning of the game, just to say, I'm going to hit for 110 every turn. I'm going to make the most consistent list I can, and I'm going to be hitting for 110 every turn. He's got some healing cards in here, he's got 210 HP, and off we go. Against small decks, things like Vespiquen, Zoroark, etc., he's going to be one-hit KOing, while it's hard for them to one-hit KO back. Against bigger decks, he is going to be 2-hit KOing, and they are going to be struggling to one-hit KO back. So let's go through nice and quickly here. First things first, we play for Gardevoir EX. You evolve Gardevoir into Mega Gardevoir, your main attacker. You need to have Gardevoir up and rolling nice and quickly. You need to play 4 of them. In terms of the attack, they're fairly underwhelming. If you can match the amount of energy on yours and your opponent's, i.e. if you've got 2 and they've got 2, that's the only time you'll use it, you do 100 damage. It's not amazing, but it sometimes gets the job done. Similarly, free energy, 120, you discard an energy, is fine. It's not great, it's fine. But one thing I would say about decks like this, people often are thinking Mega Gardevoir, Mega Gardevoir, Mega Gardevoir. There will be times playing this deck where attacking with Gardevoir EX is what you want to do. So look out for those situations, it could come back and help you. Free Mega Gardevoir EX. Why only free Mega Gardevoir? There's a couple of reasons. Firstly, we're playing 4 Ultra Ball to help search it out. That's going to help. Secondly, we're playing 2 Hooper EX to help search it out. Thirdly, we are playing 2 Super Rod to allow you to shuffle free energy or Pokemon back into your deck, helping the recovery. And fourthly, you only need to use free Mega Gardevoir during the game. You're almost certainly going to be able to search it out early game with the Ultra Balls and the Hooper. And even if one's prized, you're still going to be able to recover it with Super Rod, etc. Could play a 4th Mega Gardevoir here, but I really do think it is superfluous. Along those lines, we're playing 4 Spirit Link. You evolve to end your turn if you are a Mega Pokemon. You don't want to end your turn when you evolve, so you play a Spirit Link to make sure that you don't end your turn. You do need 4 Spirit Link here. They're not very easy to search out. You are going to need them early game. Big fan of 4 Spirit Link. The only other Pokemon in this deck are 2 Hooper, to allow you to search out all of your other Pokemon. And 2 Hooper's really good, because if you start Hooper, not only is it a terrible starter, but it puts you in an annoying position where you're actually going to be unable to use Hooper to search out your Pokemon. Not a problem here, because you're playing 2. And free Shaman. You could play a 4th, you really don't need it. Free Shaman allows you to draw what you need. Don't forget, of course, as I've said, there's 2 Super Rod in this deck, so one play here which you will be using very often: discard your bench Pokemon with Mega Gardevoir so that you can Super Rod them back in, and then use them again in the future. And that's why you don't mind playing a whole bunch of Hooper and Shaman in this deck. You are rarely going to be getting big one-hit KOs. You're not even playing Skyfield here. So best case scenario, you discard all 4 of your bench Pokemon and do 150 damage with Mega Gardevoir, 110 plus the 4 discard. And that's rarely going to happen. Maybe for something like a Zoroark Break, I suppose, but rarely are you actually going to want to do this. The difference here is that you may want to get rid of these bench Pokemon to take away the easy prizes. Your opponent cannot Lysander KO a Shaman if there is no Shaman on the bench, which also means that although, you've got 5 EX support and 4 EX attackers, so you're going to start with Hooper or Shaman more than you're going to start with Gardevoir. That's not a problem here, because you're just going to discard them at some point anyway, Super Rod to reuse them. Very basic Pokemon line. As I've said, you will discard with Mega Gardevoir's attack here, but you'll be discarding to clear your bench, not really to do extra damage. I'm not saying never, I'm saying sometimes. And as a side note here, you're playing free Fairy Garden. Now again, a 4th would be nice, but space, even in a list this bare bones, does become an issue. There's no switch cards here, there's no floatstone here. It's very much, I am going to retreat with Fairy Garden. Come across something like a Gabite, that could be a problem with his Sand Tomb, but you're just playing a whole bunch of Fairy energy. Most of the time, you'll be able to retreat with Fairy Garden without much of a problem. With Shaman, you could even just manually retreat, discard the energy, and use Mega Turbo to get it back. Supporter line, no great surprises. For Professor Sycamore, it's the fastest, most aggressive supporter we have, and this deck is aiming to be consistent. To N, because it's the second best supporter we have, and you'd rather play Sycamore. N is here. Sometimes we are going to be in a position where we want to end because we fall behind, but with your high HP, a lot of the time here you're going to be looking to take cheeky leads, so N becomes less good. 2 Lysander, just because 1 is not always enough. Sometimes it gets prized, or you can't draw into it, or whatever. Especially in a deck like this, one of the best things about Despair Ray is that it will one-hit KO a Shaman for 2 prizes. And you will be doing that in this game a lot, because you need to be taking cheeky KOs. You're not going to be fighting down every large Pokemon with this deck. Sometimes, few little KOs and a Shaman to end out the game. KOing Shamans in this deck is so important, you need to play 2 Lysander. 1 Hex Maniac is fairly standard in every deck. There are just some decks like Greninja, like Volcanion, where Hex Maniac is too good. Basically every deck plays one nowadays. 2 Skylar. Slightly unusual choice, but Skylar makes perfect sense here. This isn't a deck that takes a huge amount of setup. This deck is very much a case of, well, I need Gardevoir, Spirit Link, Mega Gardevoir, 2 energy. And sometimes all you need for your entire turn is a Skylar, because you can go and get a Spirit Link, or a Fairy Drop, or a Super Rod, or a Mega Turbo, or an Ultra Ball, and you've got everything you need. Ultra Ball into Hooper will go and get you 2 Gardevoir and a Shaman. And Skylar allows you to search Ultra Ball. There are other cards, but Skylar for Ultra Ball is going to be a fairly common play here. Of course, you can also Skylar for a Fairy Garden to help you retreat. In a lot of decks, Skylar is too slow, and it doesn't actually do the job. In this deck, Skylar is good because you rarely need much. Now, there would be an argument here for a single Professor's Letter. As you're playing Skylar, use it to search out energy, but you're playing 9 energy, you'll usually hit what you need. Speaking of which, you're playing 9 energy. All I can say about the energy count is Seb has clearly tested this list. 9 energy works. I can't say much more than that. For Versus Seeker, look, it's Versus Seeker. It's amazing. You play 4 of it. For Ultra Ball, you need your EXs. Ultra Ball's the only really good Pokemon search for EXs, and it gets Hooper, and then you're rolling. 4 for consistency. 4 Trainers Mail, like I've said, you don't need much, but you do need some things. Spirit Link, Mega Turbo, etc. Ultra Ball. 4 Trainers Mail makes it more likely that you'll draw your Ultra Ball, etc. 4 Fairy Drop. Now, this is the only part of this list that starts looking really quite weird. But if you think about what the deck does, and by the deck, I mean this specific build of the deck, this makes perfect sense. Searchable with Skylar, heals 50 damage from a Pokemon that has Fairy Energy attached. It heals 50 damage. But think back to what I said at the beginning of this video, how this deck runs. Hit for 110, don't get one hit KO'd. Stay alive while just hitting for 110, 110, 110. In that scenario, playing Fairy Drop makes perfect sense. If you want to load up your bench and swing for big one-hit KOs, Fairy Drop is entirely superfluous. But if you want to sit there and just swing for 110 while staying alive, this is what you do. Fairy Garden allows you to retreat, Fairy Drop allows you to heal, and it's just pure consistency. Of course, the other healing you've got is to just use Despair Ray to discard a damaged Pokemon on your bench so it cannot be Lysandered and KO'd. 3 Mega Turbo is consistency. Again, I would love a 4th here. I'm sure Seb would as well. Even going as consistent as we have, you can't find the space. Mega Turbo's excellent, it's an extra energy attachment, and when you've got a Mega Gardevoir, you go energy, Mega Turbo, and you're off. But what are you going to cut? Suppose you could cut a Fairy Drop, but you need to stay alive. You could cut a Spirit Link, but that hurts consistency. I mean, from Spirit Link up on the right-hand side is pure consistency. You can't really cut any supporters. 3 Stadiums is few enough, and you really need the 2 Super Rod. The only thing you could cut here is Fairy Drop, and honestly, ladies and gentlemen, if you think about precisely what this build of the deck does, Fairy Drop's too good. And of course, 2 Super Rod, like we've said. Firstly, it allows you to recover and keep going, but secondly, it combos so beautifully with Despair Ray. And honestly, most Mega Gardevoir decks should be playing multiple Super Rods. One of the most awesome things about this deck is being able to play Hooper and Shaymin, discard them all, and then late game your opponent ends you and your deck is full of Hoopers and Shaymins. You can get to late game, have 7 cards in your deck, 3 Hooper, 2 Hooper, 3 Shaymin, and then maybe the one other card you need. Love this deck. And I like this build, and thank you to Seb for sharing this and allowing me to do an analysis. I know some of you don't play your Gardevoir list like this, and that's absolutely fine. What I'm aiming to do here is show you a good, consistent list. There's a link in the description so you can see it in action. There's a comment section so you can tell me how stupid I am and what I forgot. And there is a like button. There's a subscribe button. If you haven't clicked them both already, I, shall we say politely, suggest that you do so. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter @TheWassy, and of course, as always, by far the most important thing, look after yourself until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio. And as a side note, apologies if I ever referred to Seb as Scott.